A regular lawyer wakes up in his house and realizes that a zombie apocalypse has begun outside. Will he manage to survive in this hell? It's Christmas time. In the amusement park, children and adults ride the carousels, and colorful fireworks light up the sky. A married couple, Manel and Julia, are visiting their little nephew. It's already late, and it's time for the guests to go home. Manel shows the boy a video of his cat, Lucolo, and puts him to bed. Manel and Julia are having a conversation about children. The woman deeply dreams of having a child, but her husband isn't ready for that yet. During the argument, Julia gets distracted on the road, and they end up in a car crash. A year passes. Manel is woken up by his cat Lucolo. On the news, they report that the borders will soon be closed due to an outbreak of a new virus. Manel isn't very interested. He mutes the TV and leaves. Manel gets into his car and drives to the pier. 2 women are already waiting for him there. They want to buy his boat. Manel describes the boat's technical specifications and goes down into the cabin to get the necessary documents. He notices Julia's bracelet and remembers his wife again. He loved her deeply. Manel comes back up and decides to stop by a store. His sister Belaine calls him, but he doesn't answer. We see people frantically clearing the shelves in the supermarket. At home, Manel listens to the news again and ties Julia's bracelet around his cat's neck, like a collar. He finally calls his sister Belaine back and admits he couldn't sell the boat. Belaine says that because of the epidemic, their family is moving to the Canary Islands and invites her brother to join them, but Manel refuses. The next day, the man wakes up at dawn and looks out the window. His neighbors are also moving away. Manel takes his cat, gets in the car, and drives to his sister. Meanwhile, the radio is talking about a new mutation of the virus. Manel arrives at the airport, but panic breaks out in the queue as all flights are suddenly canceled. Soon, the first fights begin. Belaine calls Manel and says the country is closing its airspace. He'd better go back home and barricade himself inside. But that's not easy, since the roads are now jammed with traffic. Manel abandons his car, takes his cat, and heads home on foot. Toward evening, he sees armed soldiers in the city isolating one of the residential areas. Soon they bring a zombie out into the street. Manel finally returns home. Before going to bed, he remembers the car crash he and his wife had a year ago. It turns out she didn't survive. In the morning, Manel calls Belaine again. She tells him that the authorities are planning to create quarantine zones for healthy people to contain the virus. But for now, it's better for Manel to stay home. Our hero watches the news and scrolls through his Instagram feed, where he sees the first reactions to the new virus. A state of emergency is declared in the country. Manel goes to the store, but it's complete chaos. All the shelves and display cases are nearly empty. People are grabbing the last of the groceries. The man takes a few cans and leaves. He picks up some more food at a small convenience store, at a gas station, and notices an injured man trying to hide from someone. We hear cries for help. Suddenly, a zombie appears, incredibly fast and agile. Manel grabs a mop to defend himself. Just then, a gunshot rings out and the zombie collapses. All the wounded people begin turning into zombies too, and our hero runs back home. There, Manel watches the news again and reinforces his house to protect himself from zombie attacks. He also installs a surveillance camera outside. The army begins evacuating people, but our hero decides to stay home. Soldiers try to break down his door, but fail and eventually leave. 2 weeks later, Manel records a message for Belaine. He admits that his supplies are running low. He needs to find more food. Manel takes a harpoon and leaves his shelter. He wanders through the deserted streets, breaking into abandoned houses to look for anything edible. In one of these houses, he accidentally spots an elderly woman named Gabriela. She has no food either. Being disabled, she couldn't evacuate. Gabriela tells Manel which houses might still have food. In one of the mansions, our hero spots a stylish helmet and motorcycle. He takes both. Manel also finds some food and shares it with Gabriela. He gives her a radio so they can stay in contact and heads out again to look for supplies. He breaks into another abandoned house. A stranger is wandering inside, but upon seeing Manel, he immediately runs away. In that house, our hero finally finds a large stockpile of canned goods. He and Gabriela have dinner by candlelight and talk about their loved ones. Manel shows the old woman photos of Julia. Back home, the man again recalls the car crash from a year ago. His anxious thoughts are interrupted by the sound of the radio. It's Gabriela. She asks Manel to turn on the radio. It turns out all survivors are being taken to the Canary Islands. Our hero suggests that Gabriella join him on his boat. She agrees. Manel packs his things for the journey and goes to get Gabriella. However, he finds the old woman lifeless. She had taken her own life so as not to be a burden to Manel. On the way back, Manel is attacked by a zombie. Luckily, he knows how to fight, and more importantly, he has a weapon. That's a pretty convincing argument against the undead. Manel decides to head to the evacuation point. He grabs his cat and takes off on a stolen motorcycle. Unfortunately, all the main roads are blocked. He has to find another way. On a forest road, Manel suddenly finds himself being chased by a zombie. Then more start to appear. He hits the gas, trying to outrun the growing horde, but eventually he crashes, flying off the bike with his cat. Manel grabs the pet carrier with Lucolo and tries to start the motorcycle, but it won't start. He abandons the bike and runs for his life, cat firmly in hand. Our hero ends up on a bridge and finally reaches the docks. He has to swim to his boat, but once on board, it won't start either. And then from the cabin, he hears a strange sound, something like a baby crying. Manel investigates and discovers a zombie infant. Without thinking twice, he jumps into another small boat nearby and heads for an island. But during the night, the motor gives out. Manel is desperate. Just when all hope seems lost, a small ship appears nearby, and there are living people on board. They rescue Manel and pull him and his cat to safety. They feed him and ask what happened. It turns out the crew are sailors from Ukraine, and one of them speaks Spanish. They give Manel his own cabin and tell him to get some rest. Later, Manel spots another boat drifting nearby. It's full of survivors, calling out for help. The next morning, he goes up to the deck and asks about the people from the other boat. The sailors tell him no one was there yesterday. Manel learns that the other survivors are being kept locked up for some reason. He tries to convince one of the sailors, Victor, to hijack the medical helicopter and fly to the Canary Islands. Victor once studied to be a pilot, so he should be able to fly it. But the sailor warns Manel to keep quiet and stop asking questions. That night, Manel comes up on deck and sees several empty boats and motorboats floating nearby. He returns to his cabin, packs his things, and leaves. Along the way, Manel finds two people tied up. He unties one of them, who tries to run, but is immediately gunned down by a guard. The guard turns his weapon on Manel, but Victor suddenly appears and stops him. A fight breaks out between them, and Victor comes out on top. He tells Manel he's ready to steal the helicopter. Our hero gets into a boat with Victor, one of the prisoners, and of course his cat. Unfortunately, the sailors spot them right away. A few gunshots kill the second prisoner and wound Victor, but they still manage to escape the ship. Once ashore, Manel and the injured Victor find a car. There's a zombie in the driver's seat, but Manel takes care of it quickly. The men hit the road. Victor tells Manel about his captain. He's building a shelter on one of the islands and only lets the obedient ones live. They arrive at the hospital where the helicopter is supposed to be, but it's gone. What they do find are zombies. Manel opens fire on the monsters and helps Victor reach the operating room. He needs to get the bullet out of his friend. While searching for surgical tools, Manel hears female voices coming from the ventilation system. He heads upstairs to look for survivors, but a zombie attacks him. He manages to take it down quickly. Seconds later, he's ambushed by a whole swarm of the undead. Manel runs, but ends up trapped in a dead end. A young woman appears just in time and saves him. Together they rush back to Victor and lay him on the operating table. Another woman arrives with a few children. While Victor undergoes surgery, Manel lets the kids pet his cat. The bullet is removed from Victor's body, and he's incredibly grateful for being saved. Manel explains that they're searching for the helicopter. One of the women says she knows where it is, but the entire landing pad is surrounded by zombies. That evening, the survivors share a meal, and Manel reveals that this is the same hospital where his wife was taken after the car accident. Sadly, the doctors couldn't save her. Manel walks over to the hospital bed where she once lay and breaks down in tears. His loyal cat Lucolo comes to comfort him. Manel goes up to the roof, and surprisingly, he gets a phone signal. A wave of messages from Belen comes through. He reads them and replies, telling her he's okay. Suddenly, gunshots echo nearby. It's the same group of sailors they escaped from. Manel rushes back to the others and warns them. They're in serious danger. They have to get to the helicopter as soon as possible. The group descends into a series of underground tunnels that lead to the landing pad. They break through a locked door with an axe. One of the women is attacked and bitten by a zombie. They take the creature down quickly, but the woman is infected and knows she'll soon turn. She accepts her fate and stays behind while the others continue. Another zombie blocks their path, but they manage to hide behind a door. Moments later, the sailors arrive and kill the monster. Manel comes up with a plan to reach the helicopter without being torn apart. The survivors build makeshift barricades using hospital beds and push them forward as mobile shields. Armed with an axe and a fire extinguisher, they fight their way to the chopper. They climb aboard, but the helicopter won't start. One by one, zombies begin climbing over the fence and closing in. Manel grabs the axe and fights them off with everything he has. Finally, the helicopter engine roars to life. But just then, the sailors arrive, armed with rifles, demanding that everyone step out. Victor gives Manel a nod. Manel opens the gates, and a massive horde of zombies rushes in and attacks the sailors. Once again, Manel is saved by his axe. The helicopter takes off, and Victor lowers the rope ladder to pull Manel on board. As they fly toward the Canary Islands, Manel's phone rings. It's Belen, and she's begging him not to go there, no matter what. In the sky ahead, 2 fighter jets appear. That's where the movie ends.